Okay, we are now recording. And today we are going to talk about the duties of the Kingdom Youth Chivalric Marshal, or Youth Armored Combat, as it is now called. The Kingdom Youth Combat Marshal is a deputy to the Kingdom Earl Marshal, which means that is who you directly report to, in addition to the Society Youth Combat Marshal. And the main responsibilities are to train and keep up with the reports of the regional marshals for Youth Armored Combat and their deputies. Each barony that has regular youth practices should have a youth combat marshal in that field, be it armored combat or rapier. Those deputies in Onstiora report to a regional marshal. And the regional marshals are responsible for giving them their training and authorizing them and making new marshals, and they report to Kingdom, and Kingdom reports to the Earl Marshal and the Society Youth Marshal. We also run youth tournaments and events. I ran a lot of youth tournaments and events when I was Kingdom Youth Marshal. I don't know if that's what everybody does, but that's what I enjoyed doing at the same time. But if it was in a group that already had their own youth marshal, I would leave that up to them and I would just help out. There is never such thing as too many adults when it comes to a youth tournament. More eyes is always helpful. If you are interested in the office, it is currently not open, but it is a 2-year office, so it'll be open in about 2 years. Well, a year and 6 months, roughly. The current officer is Lady Alexandra, not Claire of the Steps. She's fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, though, and bring up some of the documents we use as these marshals to do our jobs. Actually, I want to start with so I can show you how to get to it from the Kingdom page. Here is Onstiora's Kingdom website. If you go to Activities and then Youth Fighting, you will get this page that I helped work on. And the goal when making this page was to put as much of what could possibly be needed by anyone who's a youth marshal, parent, or combatant in one place as possible, or as much of it in one place as possible. I did make it with combatants in mind, so if there are older youth fighters who do get access to the internet, they should be able to come on here and easily navigate it and find out information they want to do on their own if they want to do that research. But I have for Armored Combat here the what is Youth Armored Combat. It's got the mission statement from the society on it. Here is some frequently asked questions for parents. Talks about the background check and how that. Where does youth happen? Here are the locations that are currently having active practices or were pre-COVID anyway. This is not up to date since then, but that's about it. And then here's the what should I bring. This has a list for what is recommended for groups that do have loaner gear. And here in the rules and resources area, we've got the equipment, and that's got vendors and tutorials on how to build your own. Same for rapier and for combatant resources. I've got link to the rules, a couple of different fighting schools, and stuff like that that I've been able to find online. They can look through to maybe help them with their own training. Tell them how to get authorized. And a detail of the youth awards that are currently available in the kingdom. This is a description of every single award, the link to the award recommendation form for people who want to put in recommendations for those awards, and how to look up who already has that award, just in case people aren't sure. And then there's resources for marshals. There's a list of how to get authorized. This includes the background check procedures. Well, it starts out with the background check procedures, and then it goes into the authorization process. Then there are marshalate resources, which brings up the society handbook, the waivers that are necessary, the authorization form, the application for an office if you're looking to become a group marshal. And then here's a list of other resources that I find personally really useful. Helmet buying guide, armor tutorials, weapon tutorials, tournament checklists, practice checklists. Ethelmark's Youth Marshal Handbook, which is really detailed for a Kingdom Youth Handbook and has some really awesome stuff in it. It's a little bit outdated though, because it was made in, I think, 2005, but it's still got some really good stuff in it. I would just recommend checking it against current rules to be sure. There's also stuff for rapier over here for rapier marshals. Here for marshal reporting, it also has the reporting for requirements for once you take an office, and links to the actual reports you can fill out. And these are Google forms that will send directly to the offices that are necessary to be reported to, so you don't have to go into your email account and everything like that to do it. And there's a list of officers. Oh, somebody went in and changed that. Good, I was brave, but I clicked on that, but I had forgotten to change it. That is the current regional officers and local officers. These are the groups that currently have youth combat marshals and who their youth combat marshals are. And this frequently asked questions, I think, goes to the Earl Marshals frequently asked questions, not the youth marshals. Yep, that's where that goes. Okay, and on the society page, there's also more resources. If you go to their document library, and then all the way down to youth and family, you'll see the youth combat documents. And that'll actually pop you right back here, or youth armored combat and youth rapier. That gives you access to the youth marshal handbook, waivers, quick look guide for armor, and weapon tutorials. So it's mostly the same information, but I figured putting it on the Kingdom page was a easier way for people to navigate it if they're just looking for unsealed information. We used to have some changes that were different from the Society's Marshal Handbook for Kingdom laws. That was a ban on thrown weapons for melees for youth combat. However, the most recent changes to the, I think it's called the Unsteered Marshal Handbook now, where it used to be called the Complete Participants Guide, that removed that ban. So now, in following with the Society Handbook, youth combatants can use thrown weapons during melees and on Steora. However, that is still one of the things that is going to be up to each individual marshal and their comfort level. If you have a marshal or if you as a marshal ever feel uncomfortable with a weapon, first thing I'd recommend you do is find another marshal and have them look at it and like discuss your discomfort. But if it comes down to you just do not feel it is safe, you can take it off the field. These are tiny humans. Safety is paramount regardless of how fun that weapon looks. They're going to be real excited because it looks really fun, and then they're going to get real angry at you, but these are tiny humans. We are adults. Our judgment of their safety is important, and that is what is the most important there. So that's one of those calls you're going to have to make. Beyond that, though, it's not that different from being a standard youth combat marshal. I mean, most of your day-to-day is going to be running tournaments, helping out at your local fighter practice if your group has a local fighter practice. If you're a Kingdom Youth Marshal and your group doesn't have a local fighter practice, I might personally be a little bit confused, but we'll see. There might not be kids. I'm not going to judge. But it's helping out your local fighter practice, helping your local group run tournaments, convincing other local groups that they need to have tournaments and youth champions, helping run those once you've convinced them, because you can't just convince them to have a tournament and then not help with it. Doesn't work out. Running melees at larger events like BAM, helping out at Gulf Wars, Penzik. I've assisted in marshaling at both of those. It's a lot of fun. There are a ton of kids, and they always need extra hands. The only slight downside there is if you're an adult fighter, the kids fight at the same time the grown-ups do. And sometimes you're going to have to pick. But, I mean, you don't have to be in every battle, and you don't have to be at the kids every day. So there's that. But otherwise, it's just a matter of keeping the reports flowing and making sure that background checks are getting done. The background check procedures are on the Kingdom website. They're pretty simple. The person who requires a background check sends an email to the Kingdom Youth Armored Combat Marshal or the Youth Rapier Marshal, depending upon which path it's for, or the Kingdom D. And then that officer sends an email to the Kingdom Seneschal and goes, hey, this person wants a background check. Are we good? And basically what they're checking there is if there are any investigations or sanctions going on against that member. And the Kingdom Seneschal is not going to tell you if there are or what they're about. But they're going to say, hey, we will authorize the Kingdom to pay for that background check. And that's telling you that there aren't any. Because the Kingdom of Onstior does pay for every background check that is done. And then once you get that approval from the Kingdom Seneschal, they write their name down on a list. And you send, or the officer will send the applicant 2 forms. That is the background check form and the credit check form. And the applicant will fill those out. And then they will send them to Teresa at SCA.org. And only to Teresa at SCA.org. No one else. And then Teresa will do their background check after she checks the society's, or the Kingdom Seneschal's list and verifies. And then they'll get a letter in the mail roughly 2 weeks to a month later. And then their background check is done. It's that easy. Sometimes things get mixed up. Sometimes paperwork gets lost. Not sure there. But most of the time, it's pretty simple. And once your background check is done, then it's time to start training and authorizing and working with your local youth marshal and getting that paperwork done. And then you get to do the fun stuff and hand swords to kids until then they get to hit their friends. And that makes you a mythical creature in their eyes who is worthy of being worshipped because they don't get to do it if they don't listen to you. And then you get a small army that follows you everywhere at every event, even when you're not marshaling. And it's pretty great. Does anybody have any questions?
I do. Am I live? Am I muted?
You are.
Okay.
You're good to go, Germanicus.
Sorry, misunderstood. Once you submit, of course, everything's conjecture. Alex is swamped. But if you send in the paperwork, typically to the Kingdom Marshal, they've got to send it to the Seneschal and so on. Do you have a wild guesstimate about how long that process takes before you would get back your background check and your forms so that you can fill those out, Teresa? I don't know.
It really depends on how often they check their email.
Okay.
Because when I was in the office, I checked my email at least once a week, and as soon as I would send an email to Kingdom Seneschal, and Kingdom Seneschal would respond when they check their email. Sometimes I can't control how long that takes. Okay. And then it's sending you the forms, and once you've got the forms in your hand, it's between
you and Teresa.
How long it takes you to fill them out and then send them to Teresa.
Okay.
And then it's how long it takes Teresa to get through her pile.
With both of us psychotic nightmares right now, my wife is selling my house out from under me, so I'm losing my armory. Grounds for divorce, by the way.
Oh, goodness.
But with Alex, I want to find out, did she get the forms? They were sent. And so I'll take care of following up on that because
if you've got the forms already.
I didn't receive them back. I have them, but if I were to mail them now, guys, Teresa's not going to see my name on the list that I'm aware of because Alex hasn't mailed.
I would recommend. Alex has a lot going on right now. I would recommend CCing the Kingdom Seneschal. Yeah, send an email, ask for the background check, approval, CC the Kingdom Seneschal. They'll probably respond. Like, if they don't respond to Alex directly, they'll probably respond to both of you. Okay. And then you'll know your names on the list. And then you can go ahead and send everything to Teresa yourself. And that'll be done. Anybody,
but I'm guilty of doing that in the past when I was flying all the time and going and so on. So we all have real life issues. But again, I've got Jay is like, what do you mean you don't have a background check? I know, Pug, same thing. You're like, you're Monicus. I know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I need to get it done. And
once you hit the society office level, I wasn't sure if you still went through your kingdom for background checks or if you went straight to Teresa or not.
You go
you're in. Still go through your kingdom? Okay.
Sure do. I had checked on my predecessor as well as Jay's predecessor, and that's what you do. You go to your kingdom that you're in. Have you come up with any sources in regards to youth combat? Because we will get back to real life, the plastic shields, things we've got to put inside the helmets. How are you guys coming on finding places to find that stuff? You know what I'm talking about?
Honestly, we have not done it. There has not been any youth combat on Steora since March.
That's why I'm playing.
The current Marshal reopening plan does not factor in youth combatants at all.
Yeah, it'll be in.
Now, if we look towards what the adults are doing, some of the adults the adults that are currently able to compete or to practice within the realm of the reopening plan have been making their own shields. Or their own face shields and plastic shields within inside of their masks. I know some people have used plastic soda bottles and like 2-liter bottles and taped the 2-liter bottle, like cut it and then taped it to the inside of their helmet. I know some people have used like Scotch tape, various things. People are being crafty and creating their own stuff.
Those bottles, brilliant. I never even thought about that. I ended up with 5 of the normal medical shields from my dentist. He knows what I do,
Okay.
and he said, "Oh, here, take some."
Hmm.
Got a couple of hundred of them, but not everybody has a friendly dentist, you know. So again, I'm kind of planning ahead because I've got to take this literally worldwide. I want to be able to tell people worldwide as we start coming back to life, where can we go to meet all the requirements? And, you know, Anstior right now is kind of leading the charge with ideas and trying to, you know, put all this together. As usual, like before, Angela, we're ahead of the game here, and I want to take
As we do.
out there, you know. So
Yeah. I do know that some of the adults are also wearing masks under their helmets. There are some people who are wearing masks under their helmets and just fighting with the mask on, and some people hate it, and some people hate it or don't hate it as much as they would the plastic shield. I know people who have tried it both ways, and it's really a coin flip as to who prefers what. So there's not really a metric for what's better right now.
we're
It really depends on who you ask.
we're making up as we go. We all are. I don't think for youth combat, if they put on a mask, I don't think the kids will be as bothered as adults are, who are puffing and blowing and going and, you know, a bit more strenuous. So we may not have to worry too
Yeah,
much.
they're younger, they've got more energy, they're in better shape.
Yeah, thanks for that.
I mean, I'm talking about me too. I'm talking about me too, not just you, me too. I mean, like,
One of the things that I have pointed out, and again, this is worldwide, and it needs to be adhered to. Um, this came up years ago when Alex and I really got things rolling. The difference between an official and unofficial practice. If it's an official practice, it means you're using websites, Facebook, one of the official Kingdom Barony group sites to promote. Hey, come, we're having a youth combat practice, Barony of Elfsea. That's official, which you can't do that right now. But if you want to go unofficial, pick up the phone, call some friends. That's not SCA. That's you having your buddies over. And there's a lot of guys worldwide doing that right now. But that's unofficial. You don't
there are.
normal channels. If you want to bring over adults or kids and do it your way in your backyard, great. So that is legal. That's okay because it doesn't involve the SCA. You're doing SCA, you're fighting SCA, you're wearing SCA, but you did not do anything that would cross that magic line. You're okay. There's been some confusion on
Okay. I mean, that's kind of also tracks with what I've always told people about the age of 6.
that. About what now?
We start youth combat. But when it comes to siblings, what you do in your own backyard is not my business. If your 5.5-year-old wants to start trading with their 7-year-old brother, like,
That's true.
I can't let it happen at events.
Right.
I can't let it happen at an official fighter practice, but I can't tell you what you're allowed to do at home.
Yeah, it's their house.
So it tracks that that's the.
You know, I had a couple of kids over here more than a few times. Came over with a family. They wanted to play with the toys. Connor would get out there or others. But, you know, and we knew that one of them was 4.5, one was 5. Fine, no problem. And it wasn't even what you and I would look at as a practice. But we didn't advertise it. We didn't tell the world about it. No problem. That's legal.
That is a little different, though, than COVID and everything is concerned.
Yes.
I mean, when you're in a smaller environment in your backyard, it's easier to control the situation with younger kids, but you can't necessarily tell the virus what to do.
That's
So
why
it's up to, I guess, personal call there.
that's what I tell people is, yeah, you can do what you want to do in your backyard. That's unofficial. That's not SCA, but please, 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 masks or your idea with the Coke bottles. My God, that's brilliant because anybody can go drink.
Well, it wasn't my idea.
Oh, it is now. I used to get promoted.
Hey, I stepped down. You're not the boss of me anymore.
That was the only question I really had. Oh, there was one other thing. There was one other thing. The thrown weapons. You know why we decided not to. You were in the middle of that. And it was because we were doing a lot of the mixed age melees. So we were kind of nervous about that, mixed age melees, thrown weapons. What if a 6-year-old gets whacked by a 14-year-old, But that was the only reason we really decided not in Onspiora. So for the marshals, same thing. I would say judgment call as far as allowing it. Be smart. That's it. That's all I got.
Okay. Actually, though, that was before my time. I had never actually looked into the thrown weapons aspect of youth combat when Master Pug came to me and asked why it was banned in Onspiora. I told him, well, this is what I've been told, but honestly, I've never done the research on it. I never looked it up. I never actually read that part of the Kingdom Youth or the Society Youth Martial Handbook because I knew it was banned in our kingdom. So I just kind of skimmed right past it. So I went and I looked more and I read into it and I was like, well, this is what it reads to me.
Right.
And I explained it to him and he's like, I don't see a reason that would be a problem any more than anything else in there is. So it's just going to be a matter of what each individual marshal feels comfortable doing.
Right. And again, leaving that to the individual marshals is brilliant for one big reason, because they are there at that event. And if you're the Kingdom Marshal, you're the Marshal who knows where, and you're not there, you can't make a decision because you may have 9, 6, and 7-year-olds and one big 16-year-old who's got a throwing axe. No, sorry, that's a bad idea.
But you might also have known that 16-year-old since they were 6 and you're aware whether or not they are capable of being that in control.
Right.
And it might be a kid that is.
Right. Pure.
So, I mean,
that's the way
I've seen some kids that, I mean, I had a hard time keeping control of them on the martial field when I first started marshaling, but now they are some of the calmest, most in control kids on the field at all.
Yeah, no.
Things change with age and personality. So I agree with having it up to the marshal's discretion. It may be something that they're not personally comfortable with ever, and I'm okay with that. But it might also be something that they are comfortable with under certain circumstances. Maybe not with youth combatants they haven't worked with before, or maybe, okay, but I need more hands. There are a number of melee scenarios that I won't do if I don't have 3 or 4 other marshals watching the field, like I would at BAM or Gulf Wars or something, but I would never do them at like a low fighter practice. If it's just me there and a handful of parents who are kind of happy watching, there are certain melee scenarios I just won't do. So I feel like it's like that.
I have a question on the topic of the throwing weapons. So what are the youth throwing weapons made of? Because I know obviously they're not like the adult ones because those are a lot sturdier.
Foam rubber.
They're basically solid foam.
Foam rubber, soft foam, like the yellow soft foam.
Gotcha. Okay.
It sounds cheesy, but I love raiding garage sales. And when somebody throws out an old foam mattress or something, not a full mattress, but like a camp mattress.
Right.
Terrible about, oh, look at that. And I'll go get it because it's going to be wrapped up in duct tape.
Right.
It's going to be in duct tape.
Nobody knows what it is.
Sealed up. They can't get to it. They're not going to sniff it, snort it, lick it, or anything else. So, those are, was that too much information?
No, you're talking about kids. We all know they're going to do that if they can.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So, Maureen, tell me, what was your favorite part of being the Kingdom? What is it called now? Because I called it the wrong thing.
Youth Armored Combat Marshal.
Youth Armored.
It used to be Youth Chivalric, but that was because it was worded in the Society Youth Combat Manual. But then they changed it to Youth Armored Combat, so using the same language makes sense.
Gotcha.
And it sounds
And
better.
that's really the only reason.
It sounds so much better than Boffer. You know,
Definitely.
the
It
kids.
does definitely sound better than Boffer.
You know what
It
happened?
makes adults take it more seriously.
That's it. That's exactly what I was about to say. The powers that be and the brass hats started paying attention. But I tell you, when they really started paying attention, honestly, and I saw this firsthand, so did Alex. When we started it, nobody wanted to give the kids any time. They just, oh, you know, y'all go over there and play. But the kids started getting bigger and better and more of them. And then all of a sudden, the adults would pick up a Boffer sword at an event and get their handed to them on a silver platter by a 14-year-old. And they started going, huh, right? And that's when it started changing. And all of a sudden, they got their time in court. They got kings and knights and dukes that wanted to come over. Let me show you something. And it was amazing seeing how fast that changed. It took in about a year, it totally turned. It completely changed.
Yeah, I mean, that is important. Actually, their graces Gabriel and Sonia were a really big part of that as well. When they were crowned both reigns, they watched almost all the youth combat tournaments that were held at events they were attending.
Yep.
And they were fantastic with the kids. They watched the entire tournament, and at the end, they would pull each kid to the side and be like, hey, and they would do fighter talk with them, just like the adults do with each other after a tournament. When you did this, and they did this, and blah, 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 like, because both Gabriel and Sonia fight. So they both could speak that language and give them some tips and some advice, and that was a really good thing you did right there, like, good job. And like, the kids knew that not only was the crown there, but that they paid attention, and that made them feel like it was important, which really was awesome.
It really was.
But you're right, the youth combatants who take things seriously and are out there to learn and also have fun. They've got 10 years where they are youth combatants. 10 to 12 if they don't start adult combat till 18. That's a lot of time to be learning. And I mean, when I fought rapier, I drew a 16-year-old in a tournament. And I'll admit this was a mistake of mine. I did not take him very seriously. And I learned my lesson in about that fast. When I thought I was out of his range, and his arms were a lot longer than I thought, and then I was dead. But I've seen the same thing happen on the adult field. I mean, I have seen kids transition to the adult field and just annihilate. And it's fantastic. It's beautiful.
I love it.
It's one of my favorite things. But now, my favorite thing that I was able to participate in as Kingdom Youth Marshal was probably the Jumbo Shrimp tournament at BAM last year.
The which one?
It was the Jumbo Shrimp at BAM last year.
Yeah.
That was the tournament where we had pairings of one youth and one adult fighter enter the tournament together. And then it was paired like a normal tournament, but on the list cards, they were put as a team. So the adult would fight the adult, and then the youth would fight the adult, or the youth would fight the youth, sorry.
Right.
And every fight won by an adult was 1 point for the team, and every fight won by a youth was 2 points for the team. So we had both adult marshals and youth marshals on the field. We didn't actually have a list field for this because accidents happen. List field was double booked. So the adult fighters had the idea of, well, let's just make a circle, and we will create our own list field with a circle of us. And I'll admit, first I was a little bit apprehensive, having the kids in the circle, but we were able to make it big enough, and all the fighters were very aware what's going on. The marshals were very aware, so there weren't any problems there. But it was really great to see. There would be moments in between rounds and while fighters were watching other fights happen, where they lean over to the youth and go, "You see what?" And he, and like, when you fight that one, I want you to. And or where the little guy would reach up and be like, "So you did good, man, but like if you had just like hit him instead of letting him hit you," and then watching the adult's face.
The first time I saw that,
it was pretty great.
It was classic. I think the little guy was 7 years old. He's looking up at a Duke, and who was his teammate, and telling him, if you would, it was hysterical. And that guy's face, the Duke's face was just,
like, what can you say? They're right, but wow, yeah. That's so funny.
They're right, but also, yeah.
Right, exactly.
But no, that was probably the best tournament that I was ever able to be part of during my time as Kingdom Youth Marshal. And the plan was to take it to Gulf Wars. But then Gulf Wars got canceled, so I will be ensuring that it is at the next Gulf Wars.
I'm hoping to go. So
yeah, I've already spoken to Sir Dex. I will be sponsoring it myself as Baroness Murieen. I will be providing the tournament prizes. I will be recruiting marshals, recruiting adult fighters, recruiting youth fighters, and making sure it happens at Gulf Wars.
My plan is to be there. Connor and Morgan, I know, Dana Red and his lady, they will not be there because their baby will be like 2 months old.
Yeah.
But that's not.
That is totally understandable.
But by BAM next year, and we had a 1-year-old in our camp this past year, and the little guy was fantastic. Our camp is starting to look like a youth combat breeding ground after years of just big guys, and all of a sudden now the little beasts are running all over the place. It's a terror. But let's see, what else was I going to ask you? And this is really, I need to know, what can I do for Onsteora as the Earl Marshal? Is there anything in particular? Let's face it, this is home team, because anything I do for you guys, you always come up with great ideas. And I want to take those out to the world, because look at the website, look what you've achieved, look what you've done. And again, I want to take that out there, because so many other kingdoms are going, how did you guys come up with that? Boy, is that Onsteora? Do y'all do that? Yeah, that came from us, And I hear that all the time. I've been hearing that since I was the Kingdom Marshal, all the time. Others are looking up to us. And I figured.
Really?
Yes, has been that.
I think
for years.
Well, if you're asking me what I think you should be doing, I think the best thing we could have right now is, because Onsteora is pretty much figured out youth combat, but what would be great is a way to regularly keep in touch with the Kingdom Youth Marshals from other kingdoms and communicate with them and do like brainstorming sessions. Hey, what are you guys doing with blah? Or what are you doing with blah? Because like those of us who are doing it in Onsteora are kind of set in our ways. We figured out the way that it works for us, and that's the way we do it. But that doesn't mean that it's the best way. And I would love to see some better ideas or some different ideas, or just like, even if it's something as simple as a new fun tournament format or a new fun melee scenario. Anything like that would be great to be able to swap stories about. I mean, I know that I've read that there is another kingdom that has a youth polling order for combatants, and I think it's the East.
Okay. It's great.
It is all about like, let me actually see if I can pull it up right now.
Well, you're just giving me a great idea in regards to, it's one thing to do what you're doing for the kingdom. It's another thing for me, because I'm getting ready to announce a Zoom meeting for all of the kingdom marshals, but that's with me, the Earl Marshal. But I'm just in what we need to do is have regular Zoom meetings, especially now between the kingdom marshals. I may set it up and I may sit back and stop anybody from causing problems, but otherwise, I'm going to shut the heck up and let you guys talk. I think that's brilliant because some of them have some fantastic ideas out there.
Mm-hmm.
They're not getting.
And include the regional marshals. I mean, the stuff that Sammer has been doing in the Northern Onsteora. I mean, she put through this entire PDF weekly when COVID started of a lesson plan on each week by week stuff to have the youth combatants do to go over youth combat stuff. Like week 1 was, I think, how to make your own sword. Week 2 was how to make your own pal. Week 3 was the 4 basic shots.
Yep.
And how to make your own armor and shield tactics. And I mean, it was a step by step. Okay, we're not having practices right now, but this is how you can learn the basics at home.
And things that they can do at home and in the backyard. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I just put in the chat the link to the Order of Gawain, they call it, is what the East Kingdom is doing. And I would love to have more information about that, but I don't have any contacts in the East that I can talk to.
I do.
Exactly my point.
Yeah, friends and
yeah, it says it is a order that was established in AS 41, and it is awarded by the Crown. Okay, so I was wrong about being a polling order. It was to recognize young people under the age of 17 who have distinguished themselves by acts of valor, honor, courtesy, chivalry, and leadership within the youth martialate activities.
I'll be darned.
And they get a scroll, and they get to wear a green garter on their arm with a gold mullet on it. I'm not sure what that is heroically, but their responsibility as a member of that order is to maintain and encourage the standards of the order within all other youth combatants and to help encourage them to meet those standards.
I like that. That's really
There's a big giant list of who's in the order. Yeah, I think it's fantastic.
I think it's brilliant. That's the kind of stuff that you guys could talk about on a brainstorming session among the different kingdoms and regionals. Like I said, I just want to put it together and to get out of the way and let you guys share ideas because there's some good ones out there. There really, really are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing that can be done for all the kingdoms, really. Onsteora specifically doesn't seem to be needing any specific help that I'm aware of, but the society as a whole, I think, can benefit from allowing all the officers in the kingdoms to get together as a group, especially right now with us not having had pens that can go forwards, which is where those things usually happen.
Mm-hmm. Right. My biggest concern, honestly, has been lethargy amongst the people, the parents, the kids. Children have a shorter attention span. They're like me. I'm just a big kid, and when you can't do anything, you can't have a practice, you can't go to all the events, you can't have that magic with all your buddies. You're like, oh, well, I'll go do something else, play video games, and I want to keep the energy going and the magic going. So I'm looking for ways where the parents and the local marshals might come up with some, who knows what, how to build a PEL on a Zoom meeting. I saw that. It was great. One was a feast just for fighters, and it was a virtual feast held by, I think it may have been the East Kingdom, I'm not sure, but it was great because the kids got to see each other for the first time in months. It was great. Oh, hi, it's so-and-so, and they had their little feast, each one set up in their kitchen, and they had a ball. They really had fun. That's what I'm looking for, is stuff like that to keep these guys excited and going. And now we're going into winter, which is even slower, but it's not even going to be noticeable because we can't do anything anyway, not in person.
Right.
So anyway, the Zoom thing though, I have to do that. That's a must.
All right, guys.
Yeah, I
well,
think
we
that
have
would be
about
fantastic.
3 minutes left. Does anybody have anything else they want to ask or talk about real quick?
No, I'm going to shut up because I've done too much talking.
No, you're good. I appreciate you being here and offering opinions and asking questions. So,
Guys, thank you, thank you, thank you. As always, I really, really appreciate everything you're doing for the kids. It's amazing. I see
everything
what
she's doing, not me. I just set up the class.
I see what our SCA kids have turned into as adults, and I've been around long enough to watch little kids turn into adults, and I see how it's affected them, and it's just magic. It's incredible. They're not thugs. They hold the door for ladies, and it's nice to see.
Absolutely. I agree. And
Okay,
thank you so much, Maureen, for teaching. I really appreciate it.
Maureen, you're amazing.
Not a problem at all. I'm happy to do it.
Guys, have a lovely evening. Be careful out there.
Thanks.
And
You too.
I'll be back
Definitely.
in
Thanks,
touch.
you too.